now. You'll have to see if you say that at the end.
Well, yeah, that's true. I'll report back later.
Okay.
Give us X number of stars on the
Right.
site. Yes.
All right.
5 preferably.
Oh, who is that coming in?
Brett.
Brett. Okay. So Rick, you're not only co-host, you're in charge now as president.
I thought you were in charge.
No, you do the announcements and the greetings. I'll just introduce you.
Okay,
I just start the meeting and say hi.
Okay, do that while I'm trying to pull up something here.
Okay. All right, I'm Madeline and I'm starting the meeting. I am not really Salem Digital Photo Group. Well, you can call me SDPG if you like. I don't answer though. So glad you all made it and that you're here for this evening. And Julia is our guest speaker. She is the curator of the photography division at Portland Art. What's the official name? Portland Museum of Art, yeah? Portland Art Museum.
Portland Art Museum. We get mixed up with the other Portland and Maine all the time.
Okay.
I get mail from my colleagues, and so we just send it back to Maine.
Well, that's nice. There are innumerable Salems in this country.
True.
And I have heard that Salem is named after Salem, Massachusetts. I have also heard that it's just shortened for Jerusalem. Or what was the other? I think that was the two. Shalom also. Yeah. But maybe all of those because the original missionaries did have connections to Salem, Massachusetts. Assumingly not the witch part, but you know, the Protestant, the missionary part. Okay. All right, Rick, are you ready? Any announcements for our group?
Yeah, I think everybody knows, but just in case there might be somebody that doesn't read their mail, Greg is going to be moving to Texas and shortly, and he's been real busy getting ready for that move. So he's stepping down, and I'm moving up to fill the rest of his reign. Term was the word I was trying to think
of. There you go.
The rest of his term, and Candace Fonder has been named vice president. Greg will be the immediate past president, so that little bit of housekeeping, nothing serious. We're all going to keep doing what we've been doing. As far as upcoming events, of course, constructive photo reviews next week. Those of you that go to that. And is Max here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Well, you want to talk a little bit about what you've got coming up?
Well, the really tremendous news is that we're starting to schedule shoots again, with the idea that people need to use good judgment about where they go and how much they go out. With the vaccines starting to become available, with the infections trending down, although there's still plenty of it out there, we decided that beginning in March, we can start doing individual outdoor shoots. No gathering, but a chance to get out and pool our pictures on the meetup site and sort of get back to shooting as a group again. I've scheduled a shoot for March 6th, but it's not specific to that date. It's about shooting sculptures in and around Salem, and you can go out anytime. I encourage you to go out at night. Some of these things are lit pretty creatively, and post your pictures. We will be doing more shoots. I'm thinking about scheduling a shoot for signs, lights, a night shoot, traffic, just kind of a creative outdoor evening shoot. Again, individual and posting pictures. I'm going to wait and see how this other one goes first. But the door is open. Those of you who have access to the calendar and who want to schedule individual outdoor shoots, you're certainly welcome to do so. I'm thinking with any luck, we can be doing some kind of group activities outdoors by sometime in April, but it's too soon to really make that announcement. That's more aspiration than anything else. But we're moving in a good direction, particularly with the availability of vaccine.
Okay, thank you, Max. I don't see anything else scheduled on the meetup site. Does anybody else have any announcements? Anything
Oh,
of
yeah.
interest?
We have our next month's speaker. We have speakers set through May now.
Okay.
So next month is Adam Gibbs, who is a landscape photographer. I think he's based in Idaho, but he does a lot of Northwest shooting. One of his images was one of Flickr's, if you know that site, top 25 or top 20 images of the year. So he will be speaking to us at the next meeting. The month after that, in April, is a historian, a photographer who will be talking to us about the history of photography and how it's been changing over the years. And in May, we have the director of Blue Sky Gallery, also a photograph gallery, a photography gallery in Portland. So that's what's coming up through May.
Just a correction, Adam Gibbs is up in Victoria Island.
Oh, Victoria. Okay. I thought he shot there a lot, but I thought he lived in Idaho. We'll find out next month. We'll find out more next month, I'm sure. But you can look at his work. I think I put on the meetup site, you have his information, his website, book reference, and his Instagram account. Also, April, Mike Burns is also a photographer. He'll be speaking to us on the history. He also has Instagram. I don't think he's published anything I know he's working on a project now, but his emphasis will be history of photography and how the aesthetics have changed over the years and the equipment. Julia, you're welcome to join us as our guest. I'll send you the links.
Yeah, that's actually tempting. Yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anything else?
If there's nothing else, then I guess we're ready to start the program. So I'll turn it back over to you, Madeline, to introduce Julia, and off we go.
Okay, folks, this is Julia.
Very good.
Yeah, and I'm going to let her do that. Just we're an informal group here, so there was information on the meetup site if you guys read that, and if not, Julia can just fill us in. So go for it. It's all yours. You are a co-host if you want to share your screen, whatever you want to do.
I'm going to do that. Give me 1 second. I am not great at talking and sharing my screen, unfortunately. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to share this and then get over here to my PowerPoint and then go into presenter mode so it looks larger. Is that better? Yeah, that looks
well
great.
done.
Excellent. Thanks. We use, at work, we use Google Suite. So it's a different, I like Zoom very much, but I toggle back and forth between the two. So I'm not always up on my tech. But thank you so much, Madeline and everybody else, for the invitation. It's really nice to be here. And one of the benefits to this terrible time is being able to do things a little bit differently and reach out to people in different ways. And this is one of the great ways to do it, I think. I am someone who works in a museum, so I, of course, prefer to be with photographs in person. But this will do for now, certainly. And when we're finally open again and are more vaccinated and can get out and about and be together, I hope you can all come up and see what we have on offer. We are still closed at the moment. We are trying to figure out when we will reopen because the governor's orders just changed yesterday. Unfortunately, with the limitations we have, we're in a position where we need to wait a little bit longer to open because there's a point where we would open but lose money. And we're in that point now. We need to wait until we can allow more people in per hour. I think we're limited to 50 at this point, and we need to move up to about 100 per hour. So it will still be we have over 50,000 square feet of exhibition space. So you're not, for the most part, ever going to be stuck next to people, which I never love anyway as a museum experience, but I think you will have even more of an opportunity to move around and see things more closely and so on. And for a while, it unfortunately will be required that you do reserve your tickets, because we need to know that you're coming so that we can prepare and then not have, say, 300 people show up 1 hour on a Saturday. We need to spread those 300 people out over different hours. So our website will always be updated as best we can. Sometimes a little difficult to navigate here and there, but bear with us and give us feedback and we'll try to make it as smooth as possible. But we're hoping, we know at some point this spring will open, we're sure, pretty sure, but we're just waiting. We've had to open and close and try to, we've changed so many dates and done so many things that we're just being as cautious as possible and to be as accurate as possible with the folks who like to come visit us, because it's hard to keep changing information on people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can access some of our photography holdings online. Then I'm going to talk about a bit of the history of photography at the institution. I'll talk about some of the shows that I've done. And then at the end, I'll talk about the Ansel Adams exhibition that's actually hung now. We did install it, but the lights are off and the doors are locked and we're just waiting until we're allowed to throw open the doors and welcome you all in. So that's the process I'm going to go through. I'm super excited to take questions. Because of this format, it may be easier to take the questions at the end, but I'll leave that up to you. We can just see how it goes. Oops, this happens to me sometimes. There we go. So the first thing I wanted to show you is ways that you can access the museum at any time. And I don't know that lots of folks know how much of the collection we have on online, and so that people can access it, look around, think about things. I think you can even make your own little grouping of works if you want to. So if you look at the red arrow at top left, if you go to portlandartmuseum.org, that's our main page, and you'll see the main page right here. And then, I don't know if that screen sharing is in the way like it is for me. Hopefully it's not blocking your view. Anyway, if you then, I've kind of pulled out, this is the front page splash that you'll see at this point. If you go down just a little bit to the P at the left and then move over to collection, if you click on collection, that's where you can explore the permanent collection objects that we have in the museum. And we have over 50,000 objects in the museum's possession. And so when you click on collection, it will take you to this page that says online collections, and you'll see like artwork of the day. And then from there, permanent collection installations that you can click on and see all the, for the most part, all the text that's included in the exhibition that's physically on view at the museum. The things that you see right now, these are up and they're on the walls, but of course the museum is closed, but you can access the exhibition here. And let's say that you know what you're looking for. You can go over to the right-hand side and click on artists, and it'll bring you a list of artists, and you can then decide from there where you want to go. Top right, the search option is always a good one. If you do want to see what Ansel Adams holdings we have, you can plug that in.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay. I heard somebody say hello, so.
I don't know who that was, but we'll.
Okay.
That was me. It didn't look like my microphone was working. This is Susie.
I can't see you at the moment, so I may check in on occasion just to make sure everything's okay. But you can pop up into the search for collections and enter a word. You could even enter in Lunar New Year, so you can enter in keywords and things and see what might come up. And then when you do that, so what I did was I just entered the word photograph, and it takes you here and it gives you, in this case, records with images, 6,517 results. So anything that is considered to be a photograph within the collection that we have made photography of and gotten into the database and so on, you can actually look up at any point, 24 hours a day, wherever you are in the world. So that's a type of access that you are always free and welcome to use. And we hope that you do use that, especially while you're not able to come to the museum. We have over 10,000 photographs in the collection, and we don't have them all photographed and the data set up and ready for the public just yet. And unfortunately, we did lose our staff that does that work because of the pandemic and the cutbacks. We lost 60% of our staff. So it's been a tough year, like it has been for everybody. But we know this is a really important aspect of the work that we do, that, you know, access outside of the physical space of the museum. So hopefully within the next couple of years, we can get back on track with that, but it's going to take us some time to do some rebuilding. What I also want to show you is we have a lot of content on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you type in Portland Art Museum, you'll see here on our channel, we have 22,000 subscribers. And from there, if you want to, over on the right-hand side, if you really want to know about photography and see what we have, you can just type in photography and it will bring up all these different video resources for you. I think we have over 600 videos on our channel, not just photography, but all different aspects of the collection, different speakers, symposium, all sorts of things. So please, if you want, if you're not so completely sick of your screens yet, come on over and have a look at a bunch of the things that we've been doing in about the past decade or so. There's so much content here. I haven't even gotten to all of it. I may have been present in the room for a lot of it, but I haven't actually been able to watch it online to remind myself. What I thought I'd do is give you a very, very brief overview about how the photography collection started. We're about 128 years old at this point. The Portland Art Museum was established in Portland in 1892. And we're meant to be a place where people could come and appreciate art, but also learn art. Art education has always been a really important aspect of the institution. We bounced around. We used to be in the what is now the Multnomah County Library. We used to be part of the kind of library building. And we got our own building around 1905 and then moved to the new, quote unquote, area campus around 1930, early 1930s. It was during the Depression. And one of the first ways, and this is very, very typical, that photographs came into the collection was through our library. And one of the first really important photographic works, and it was certainly considered important then, was Edward Curtis's full set of the North American Indian. So all 20 volumes that were produced between 1907 and 1930. And then with each of the 20 volumes came a portfolio of larger prints. Not all the same as the ones in the book. So you could have things to read and you could also have objects to display. And so we were given that a subscription. I think we have set number 56 out of the maybe 222 or so that were fully produced. So we were really lucky to get that. Photography has always been important to the Portland Art Museum. Within the first decade, they started exhibiting photographs, if not collecting them as fine art objects. Not at all unusual for photographs not to be considered fine art. Even into the 1970s and 1980s, many museums did not have photography collections or did not collect photographs into the 70s and 80s, and some only started then. Most institutions understand that it absolutely is an art form now. Although I will tell you that I still get questions from people on tours sometimes trying to make that leap between something they can make with their own camera or even their phone and how a photograph can actually be artistic. There are still some entrenched beliefs that if it's not a painting or a drawing or a sculpture, then how is it artistic? How can a machine do that work? And it's part of my job to talk about why it can be an art and why that's important. So I still do hear that on occasion. So this was a really important part of the way that we started collecting photographs, that some of the photographs came into the library, and these actually remained in the library as a resource until about the year 2000, when they were finally moved over into the fine art collection. But they were very well handled, and a lot of people were not interested in them between about 1930 and maybe 1975, 1980. So they hadn't been handled much, even though they were out and about, for people to use. Our collection, for the most part, really got established as a photographic fine art collection in 1942, when the US government gave to us on pretty much a forever loan of photographs that Minor White made in Portland in 1938 and 1939. He made them for the Works Progress Administration, which was one of the programs that kept folks busy, not just busy, but employed and gathering a paycheck during the Great Depression. And so he was really the only Oregon photographer working under that program, and made some of the most beautiful, beautiful work that we have in the collection right here in Portland, in the downtown core area. Many of the buildings are now gone, and then also along the Willamette too. And so even though these photographs were made for the government by Minor White, because they paid him to do this work, they're technically property of the government, but the government did so much of this programming throughout the Great Depression, they can't keep it all in one place in DC. So it really benefits us that in 1942, they deposited all of these works in our collection. And they, I think we have, from this earlier grouping, I think we have a little over 100 of these photographs, maybe. Beautiful larger format prints. They're like 11 by 14 at least, maybe a smidge bigger. And then on top of that, we have a lot of other Minor White work as well. Even though once he was drafted into the military, he never came back to Portland permanently. He did come back to do workshops, but he never lived here again. So we do have some pride in this collection, because it's where he started making his photography, and he's world famous now. I am skipping over so much. So that was 1942. In the 1950s and the 1960s, there were a couple of directors who purchased portfolios. So in the 1950s, an Ansel Adams portfolio was purchased. In the 1960s, an Edward Weston portfolio was purchased. Super good purchases at the time, and really fantastic for our collection today. There wasn't a lot of photography collecting in between. So there's a bit of a lull, but then things really start to ramp up as photography is considered more and more an art form, and then you see it moving into modern and contemporary worlds of art as well. So you'll see little bits of donations here and there around that time. And my predecessor, Terry Toedtemeier, who some of you may have heard of, you may have known personally, who taught at what is now the Pacific Northwest College of Art, but was the museum school. He taught photography there. He went to the University of Oregon. He has had a geology degree from there, but made photography his life. He was our first curator of photography and was hired in 1984, 1985. And he was the person who really made photography a consistent program, even though it had been shown all along since as early as 1905 in periodic exhibitions at the museum. So it was always embraced, always appreciated, but a full and specific program was not really put together until the mid-1980s. Again, not unusual for a museum or in the country to take that long to set something up. Terry was actually never full-time at the museum. He was part-time and then ended up being something like 4/5 time, which is basically full-time. But when he died suddenly in 2008, he was technically still part-time. And I'm the second curator of photography, but I'm the first full-time curator of photography. And I arrived here in 2010. I was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art before that. I had a fellowship there specifically in photography. And photography has been my love for many, many years. I have a B.F.A in photography, and then decided I was better at thinking about and exhibiting photographs than I was at making them. So I just take photographs with my iPhone today, and that is perfectly fine with me. I'm happy to just look at everybody else's and think about them and put them on walls. But Terry was really special to the community in so many ways. So I do not consider myself a photographer and artist, even though I do have this degree in fine arts. Terry was a fine artist, and he was a photographer, and he was a landscape photographer, and Oregon was his love. He was born and raised here, traveled of course, but this was his home, and he made the landscape of Oregon his business, and that continues to resonate with people. And so about 2 years now, maybe 2 years ago, we did an exhibition of his work at the museum, and we're really grateful to have quite a few of his photographs in the collection. And I unfortunately did not meet him because I was in Philadelphia, and I had never been to Oregon before I applied for the position. So I'm very sorry that I never got to meet him in person or take a class with him or learn from him. I hear many, many wonderful and fascinating stories about him. So we didn't have a particular photography program between the end of 2008, when unfortunately we lost him suddenly. And then I arrived in June of 2010. Since I've been here, I've done over 40 exhibitions. So I'm going on 11 years at this point. It's a lot of shows. I had a little more energy, I think, in the first years that I got here. I'm just showing you some examples here. Like I said, when I got here, we had a collection of about 8,000 photographs. We're now at about over 10,000. One of the best ways to learn about a collection is to make exhibitions from it. So we have about 2,000 square foot gallery dedicated to photography. Since I've been here, and since it opened in 2005, it is always where photographs are shown. And that allows me to do a lot of exhibitions. Plus I take over other spaces at different times, including the special exhibition space in the main part of the building. So this was actually really fun this afternoon as I was putting this together. I was looking at some of the shows that I've exhibited, because my memory is not as great these days, and I have forgotten some of the shows that I've done. So some of the early shows, like all the ones you see here, are all collection-based exhibitions. So I was working with a collection that is stronger in 20th century American work than pretty much anything else. But we do have some 19th century examples, American, just a couple European, and we do have some European travel photographs from the 19th century. I was, for the most part in these earlier exhibitions especially, trying to give a history of photography that we have in the collection through objects. So 19th century European, American, sometimes Asian, the best examples of what we have. How can I give you a history of photography in 2,000 square feet? So that's what Through the Looking Glass does. Flesh and Bone. Flesh and Bone was all about the body, and I coordinated that exhibition with the Body Beautiful exhibition, which was all about representation of the human form in ancient Greece. So it's fun sometimes to actually complement a main stage exhibition with a photography show to demonstrate this type of subject matter, but strictly within the boundaries of the photographic medium. And then Dusk Through Dawn was really wonderful. You were just talking about doing some nighttime photography. Photography at the edges of daylight is just so glorious. And what people do in the middle of the night, during the blue hour, alpenglow, all these things. So that was, I liked that show. That was really fun. They were all fun. I learned so much. But it's nice to look back on these again and think about them. Some of you may know, either personally or because he lives in Astoria, Robert Adams, one of the most important landscape photographers working in the United States in the 20th century and now into the 21st. I've been thinking a lot about Barry Lopez as well lately, because he just passed away, the writer. And if you maybe know Barry Lopez's writing, but you don't necessarily know Robert Adams's, ethos, they're very similar in how they think about the land, and in particular the American landscape in Bob's case, and how we've destroyed it, but how there is still hope in it. And so what can we do to bridge that gap? So that was a special exhibition in a different space. So I had multiple exhibitions up at one time. In early 2013, Carrie Mae Weems, 3 Decades of Photography and Video, took up the entire special exhibition section. Carrie Mae Weems is an artist who actually was born right here in Portland, and took the world by storm by the 1980s, and is world renowned at this point. And she's also a Black woman who has, grew up in a place like Portland, which is very, very white, and Oregon is in general. And she deals with issues of identity and race. And so it's very, very powerful, stunning, important work. Blue Sky, Madeline, you said somebody from Blue Sky will be talking to you soon. They are about 45 years old at this point. One of the most wonderful nonprofit welcoming of so many different photographers organizations in the world. It's hard to establish yourself in the 1970s as only doing photography, because people didn't care about it as much at that point. So we did a 40th anniversary exhibition with them that also had a publication. That was intense, because I think they've done, in their 40 years, they had done 700 some odd exhibitions with over 500 artists. So how do you narrow that down into 4,500 square feet? That was complicated, but amazing at the same time. Other exhibitions I've done, as I started to, things changed just a little bit after I did a number of the history of photography shows. Again, because of the way our collection is, we could only do so many of those in a way that didn't keep bringing out the same photographs over and over again. And that's okay. So it was time for a bit of a change. Classically modern, we have a stunning group of interwar photographs by Vera Prasilova-Scott, who was a Czech photographer who ended up moving here. She married an Oregonian who was a professor at Reed, and she had a portrait studio, and her portraits are absolutely stunning. So it was so nice to give the space over to her work for a while. Force of Nature, Emmett Gowan in the American West photographed Mount St. Helens from the air. He was one of the first people to do that, because he just happened to have a grant to be working in Washington in 1980 during the eruption. But he also looks at Hannaford, and then other places as well that deal with more complex aspects of our landscape, and how people have changed the landscape. And then contemporary Native photographers in the Edward Curtis legacy. This is something that was really special to me. This was an exhibition that combines history with today, which I think is a really wonderful way of both showing people what they might already know and be more comfortable with, like Edward Curtis's photographs, but also complicating that dialogue and complicating the history. And so we brought in amazing contemporary photographers, Zig Jackson, Wendy Red Star, who lives right here in Portland. She just had a big retrospective, early career retrospective, because she's maybe 40, at the Newark Museum just last year. She's in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in MoMA, and then Will Wilson as well. And actually all 3 photographers are in the Ansel Adams exhibition coming up. This was also an example where I co-curated. A lot of the work that we do is often a single curator, but it's really wonderful to work with another curator who has a different specialty. And different perspectives often. So Dina Dart, who at the time was our curator of Native American art, she is Chumash, and she is also a scholar of Native American art. So we curated this exhibition together, which was super important, I think, to have a Native curator working alongside me, because I am white and I do not know as much of the history or the realities of representation within Native American cultures. So that was a really special exhibition, and took up one of the special exhibition floors. Minor White's Oregon photographs I did back in 2017 and 2018 in 2 groupings. There were so many that were so fantastic that I couldn't choose. Like I couldn't narrow it down to 55. That's about all I could fit into the 2,000 square feet. So I decided to do the show over a year in 2 phases. So after about 6 months, I did a refresh of all the exhibition's images so that people could get a new take with different photographs on this work that he did in Oregon. And we had Princeton University Art Museum holds Minor White's archives. And so I am friends with the curator of photography there, and she and I put together a symposium, and we had scholars come around from around the country and look at Minor in his early work specifically, and his becoming an artist. Most people know about his later work in the 60s and 70s, but this really concentrated on his time in the West Coast rather than on the East Coast. So that was really special. Representing vernacular photographs of, by, and for African Americans, really beautiful exhibition that also looks into the idea of the power and importance of everyday photographs and snapshots, and how people represent themselves within photographs, and then how they choose to maybe give those photographs to relatives or friends, particularly when we had a more active printing of photographs within our culture and around the world. So what does it mean to be inside a community and then choose to give? It's almost like emotional currency. What does that look like? And then, can we talk about the power and importance and beauty of everyday snapshots within the space of a museum? And I argue that yes, we absolutely can. Common Ground, photographs by Fuzzle Shake, really important work about displaced persons and telling their stories. A lot of times when we see displaced folks, let's say in the newspaper or National Geographic or in Time magazine, they're nameless, sometimes they're faceless, and we see them at their worst moments in their lives. And Fuzzle works, he is Kenyan and American, and he works often in Africa, and then he also has Middle Eastern, he's of Middle Eastern descent as well. So he works with folks who are often anonymous or unnamed, and he works to provide them, with dignity and gets them to tell their stories first person. And just the simple act of naming someone within their photograph within the space of a museum is very, very important. These are individuals with dreams and needs, just like the rest of us. I'm almost done talking about what I've done, and this is just a quick snapshot. One of the toughest, but one of the most important exhibitions I've done is Memory Unearthed, the Ludge Ghetto photographs of Henrik Ross. This is an exhibition we took from the Art Gallery of Ontario. And Henrik Ross was a photographer who was in many ways kept alive in the Ludge Ghetto, which was one of the longest running and second in size only to the Warsaw Ghetto during World War II. And he was used by the Nazis as a camp photographer for ID labels and things like that. Not ID labels, but everybody in the ghetto had an ID card and other photographic records. But as things got way worse and so much more dire, and tens of thousands of people were dying or being shipped off, he started sneaking photographs, and which, if they had found him out, they would have killed him immediately, and his wife and any other family members or friends who helped him. So he did all of this really, really important documentary work, and then buried the negatives and some of the original prints in the ground. And he was one of 870 so people who were still in the Ludge Ghetto when the Russians, I believe, freed the Ludge Ghetto. And he was able to go back about 2 months later and retrieve them. So this is the type of witnessing work that photography can do, and the type of documentary and storytelling that words can't always hold. And so many of these people did not survive to tell their stories. So it's really amazing that this work still exists 80 years on. Almost done. Toughened to Wind and Sun, women photographing the landscape. We often talk about, our history has a lot of men photographing the landscape. I specifically did an exhibition of women who go out into the landscape and photograph from the very late 19th century to about 2015 in that exhibition. Hank Willis Thomas, All Things Being Equal, that was my last big exhibition to close before we closed the museum. And Hank is an African-American man who deals with issues of race and also gender. A lot of his work is photographic, but he has also taken it conceptually and turned photographs into sculptures and other things like that. So I co-curated this exhibition with our modern and contemporary curator. So that was the first time I've ever worked with sculptures and three-dimensional objects and video. I've worked with video before, but quilts. He's just multimedia. So it was a really wonderful experience to move out of the photography, even though, of course, I love photography, and it was a wonderful experience to work with those. Right now, and when the museum opens again, I have 2 exhibitions that will be on view. Though There Be Fury on the Waves, Victor Jorgensen at Sea. This is a great exhibition of about 95 photographs that were recently donated to us. Victor Jorgensen used to write for the Oregonian, or he was kind of worked his way up from the mailroom and became a night editor and did some writing and then made some photographs, and then ended up joining the Navy during World War II and made photographs on multiple ships in the Pacific Theater. Some of the most beautiful photographs I have seen, and I love documentary. It's one of my favorite modes of photography. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous show, vintage prints. So if you have a chance to see it, we're probably going to extend it because it's really only we closed on March 14th. That was the first day we closed. So basically no one saw the exhibition. We were open a little bit in I think September to beginning of November. So a few people have seen the show, but not many. And because the lights are off and so on, it'll be fine. So we'll probably keep that one up longer. Okay, I'm just checking my time. So it's 7:43. The last thing I thought I would talk to you about is what you see on the right-hand side, Ansel Adams in Our Time. Are we doing okay on time?
We're doing fine on time, but we have a couple of questions. So maybe it would be a good time to take them.
Sure. Yeah, are they typed in or are they verbal?
Well, they're typed in, but I can read it.
That'd be great, thanks.
So it says, one question is, over the years, I've been interested in individuals' definition of fine art photography. Mm-hmm. What is the gallery definition?
Depends on which gallery you talk to. And that's what you see in exhibit. Whoops, I wanted to go, nope, I want to go backwards. Oh my goodness, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I gotta fix that. I'm showing you stuff and I don't want you to see it. There we go. So like with Memory Unearthed, this breaks a lot of barriers in terms of what a gallery or a museum might find of value. But I think it's really important as a curator and as somewhat a historian of photography that we break those boundaries. One of the most important things to me about photography is that most people don't find it inaccessible, whether it's because they have a camera, somebody in their family has a camera, they have a camera on their phone now. We are all bombarded by photography every single day. If we are very fortunate enough to have sight, right? So it's really important that we learn that photography is a language and that we learn how to read it and how to interpret it, because it's constantly coming at us. I am not as interested in defining exactly what a photograph does. I'm much more interested in a museum as a place of really enjoying photographs for their beauty, but also getting information from them. And because most of my historical work is based on images that are transmitted through the newspaper or magazines, there is such beauty and artistic content in them, but there are also messages. So I really want to know what messages come out. So you can ask 100 different gallerists or curators what their definition of a fine art photograph is, and you will probably get 95 different answers. So if the work to me, has, if it's a body of work that has a story to it, that has, a certain type of vision that the photographer can give me that I may not be able to get myself, a viewpoint, a beautiful composition, all of those things to me are artistic. In terms of earlier phases in our history, around the turn of the 20th century, people like Alfred Stieglitz were trying to make photographs look like etchings or prints or drawings. Toughened to Wind and Sun, this image that you see right here, is an example of that, by Annie Brigman. She was a pictorialist. Like, that's a really beautiful photograph, but it's not the type of photograph that we necessarily see all that often today. It's very moody and romantic and fuzzy, right? So all of those things are great. But that definition changed. Between the world wars, it was all about what the photograph could do as a machine. We're in the machine age now. Hard lines and industry, like what can be beautiful about those things. And then Ansel Adams works in both of those modes. He was a pictorialist at the beginning, and you'll see that in the exhibition. His early pictorial work is there. And then you can see in the 1930s how he goes for a more hard-edged, very detailed type of style. So both are artistic. It's his expression, right? So that was a very long-winded answer to say, I don't know. I don't have a bad answer for you.
Great answer.
And that's one of the things that I love about photography.
Someone else asked if you could show some of the photos from some of these exhibits. I assume that's what you're going to do with Ansel Adams now.
Well, yeah, I'm going to show you Ansel. I kind of figured that people would want to see a little more of that. The good thing is, though, for most of these you can see online when you would like to go back. I actually just grabbed all of these. These are all screenshots from our website. You can go to our past exhibitions, and the blue, if I remember correctly, of each title means you can click on it. And then it will take you to all the objects that were in the exhibition. So Memory Unearthed, we didn't own those objects, so I don't have photographs online to show you of those. But Toughened to Wind and Sun, that was women photographers, that was a collection-based exhibition, so you can see those online. I would love to show you all the photographs. It's nice for me to review them. I also have a tendency to talk a little too long. So I'm trying to keep myself, boxed in to the amount of time that we have.
Another question was, and it echoes one of mine too, is comment on the art of black and white versus color. And I've noticed that there was very relatively little color in these oversights.
Yeah. Our collection, because of collecting patterns, whether it's what Terry was able to collect and what he saw, Terry was also colorblind. So he worked almost exclusively in black and white, and only in the mid-aughts, a few years before his death, did he start making color photographs. He needed somebody else to work with him. He didn't trust his own judgment, but he trusted his judgment on black and white photographs, right? So it's so interesting how people get to whatever place they're in. There isn't a lot of color photography pre-1945. A lot of color photographs that were C prints, that were printed in the 60s, there aren't that many, 70s, 80s, 90s as fine art prints. Their color has shifted because the chemistry is unstable. So we don't get to show a lot of those anymore because they just aren't what the artist was wanting to represent. Digital photography is great for color, I think. And I feel like digital photography has just gotten better and better and better. And people are doing wonderful things with it. So I'm not showing you, you're right, a lot of color photographs here. Color photographs are absolutely integrated into exhibitions, and they are even integrated into the Ansel Adams exhibition. But you're right, the photographs that you're seeing from these exhibition pages are not color for the most part. That's a good point. I'll tell our web designer that maybe we can mix it up a little.
And that's it for the questions for the moment.
Okay, so let's go a little bit, tiny bit more into detail for our good friend Ansel Adams and the exhibition that is coming up next. So here I'm just showing you and there is some color, although it's a little bit difficult to see. Let me get back to sharing my screen. Where am I? Am I still sharing it? Yes, it looks like I am, but I need to get back to this and move this and present. Is that better? Yeah, that looks right. Okay. So these are the banners that we have out front. We made sure to at least get the banners up for the exhibition. It's like if we put the banners up, then the exhibition will happen. We're just in this super weird moment in our history. Normally we put dates on it. Originally this exhibition was supposed to open this past October. And then it was supposed to open on January 30th. And then we just had no idea. So we left the dates off, but damn it, if we spent the money on it and we have it here, we're going to open this thing. And it is so beautiful. The image that you see on the left is one of the classic Ansel Adams Yosemite images. And then on the right-hand side, it is meant to be blurry. This is a Catherine Opie color photograph of her interpretation of Bridal Veil Fall in Yosemite as well. So you get a taste of Ansel Adams, but this exhibition is about 100 photographs by Ansel, spanning his entire career, complemented by, I think it's about 26 or 27 contemporary artists through about 80 photographs. It's a big show, about 180 photographs altogether. Most of the work comes from the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. They have an incredible, incredible collection in their institution of Ansel Adams works, most through donation. I am showing you these. Curator friends of mine went to MFA Boston about maybe 3 weeks before the exhibition closed in Boston, and they were horrified because they could barely see anything. It was a lot because they had over 200,000 people come to the exhibition in 10 weeks. They weren't expecting it at all. We all know that people love Ansel Adams and want to see his work, and they were expecting that. They were not expecting 200,000 people. We cannot put 200,000 people through the exhibition while we have it here. So we're just, because of health reasons. So you will not experience this if you are able to come see it in person, which I actually prefer and appreciate. This is not my ideal looking experience. Especially with 180 photographs, trying to jockey for position and read labels and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to give you a sense of how popular it was in Boston. It then went to Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is a really wonderful, one of the newer museums. It all comes from Alice Walton of Walmart. She is the Walmart heiress and loves art and put together her own museum, and it is quite a wonderful place. Anyway, I just wanted to show you, this is how an exhibition gets started on my wall at home in my kitchen and dining room. Normally all this work would be done at the office, but we weren't working in the office over the summer. So I started by making this absolute mess of the 180 photographs over 2 floors. And it looks like a disaster, but I can read it and understand it. So I had to start somewhere, and 180 photographs is really overwhelming. So you got to get it down on paper. So from there, I went to our 3D model and played around. I call it the dollhouse, and I played around in the dollhouse, and it's a scale model, and was able to figure out what will fit where. I will tell you that I always get it wrong. And even though I think that I've got every scale down and, oh yes, that will definitely fit on that wall, it does not definitely fit on that wall. And you won't know that until you get everything into the physical space. and put it on the wall, and you realize you don't have enough room and you have to change things around. That to me is part of the art of curating. And also when you get the photographs in the space, they have their own chemistry, and on a little piece of paper, you're like, oh yeah, that'll look really good next to this photograph. And then it's like any other relationship, you get those two people in a room together and the chemistry either falls flat or there's a little bit of magic, and you just have to let them work and let their magic come forth. So there were a number of things that I rearranged from here, and I like the chemistry. I think it's doing pretty well. So we go from that 3D model to this beautiful model that is put together in a program that I have no access to and wouldn't understand how to do, but our art director does that for me. And then we sent this to Museum of Fine Arts Boston. They looked at it, made some suggestions, approved it, and then we all worked off of this as we were installing the exhibition. So we always know where the objects are and where they're supposed to go, because this is a 10,000 square foot exhibition. There's a lot of real estate in this show. You don't want to lose track of anything, especially because they aren't our objects. This is a shot I took and put on Instagram, my own Instagram, because this is how you install an exhibition now. Museum of Fine Arts Boston was going to send a photography conservator, a registrar, which is kind of like an art librarian. They keep track of every object. And then the curator of the exhibition to be with us for about 10 days as we installed. And all of that went out the window with the pandemic. So we had to do everything via Zoom. So we always had 2 computers all day long on carts that our registrar here in Portland would roll around so that they could see exactly where we were placing things and exactly how we were installing them on the walls. And so that's me taking a photograph of it. And the person you see with her hands up, that's Karen Haas, and she's the curator, one of the curators of photographs at Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and this is her exhibition. So I was asking her a question about a relationship between 2 Ansel Adams photographs, and she's giving me some information there. So it worked out really, really well, but then you've got this 3-hour time difference thing and long days for them, long days for us, and some things get lost in translation. But in the end, it worked out really, really well. This is an installation view. I'm just showing you a couple installation views as we were installing. So the works that you see on the left, if you've ever heard of Ansel's Parmelian prints of the High Sierras, and yes, that is made up words there. It's Sierra, not Sierras, and Parmelian prints is a completely fake word that was used for marketing photographs, because this portfolio was published in 1927 when almost no one was buying photographs or looking at them as art. So the Parmelian prints you may have heard of, but you may never have seen them. We have the whole portfolio here, which is wonderful. To the right of those prints, you see a 21st century exhibition image that Marilyn Bridges photograph that mimics some of the language of photography, like the 19th century photography stereograph work that you see in the case, and Ansel Adams's. And so there's a relationship there and an influence there that we tease out in the exhibition. This case is really wonderful. It's printed material as well as private photographs from a private album that was made for Yosemite, and then stereo cards that give you that wonderful stereo experience in the 19th and early 20th century, but all about Yosemite. So this is one of the first galleries in the exhibition, because that's where Ansel got his start. Here's another view downstairs, and you might be able to see, not quite here, but a little bit, all along this wall in the middle ground. These are all Ansel Adams's photographs. But then in the far back wall, you can't quite tell, but those are really beautiful, large color photographs by Laura McPhee that actually deal with forest fires and wildfires. So we deal with a lot of environmental issues in this exhibition as well. There's a lot going on in this show, you know, how we show up in the landscape and so on. And this is another idea. These are some of the first photographs you will see in the introductory section of the exhibition. We have some 19th century examples, for instance, this beautiful image by Carlton Watkins, to demonstrate that Ansel Adams wasn't born whole, and he just didn't like come out of nowhere to become this amazing photographer who's probably the best known photographer in the world of all time. He had predecessors, and he knew somewhat about those predecessors, and he knew about painting, and he knew a lot about photography, and he honed his craft year, going on, forward, and learned a lot of things as he went, and changed his vision as he learned things. So you will see a few predecessors, some 19th and very early 20th century works in the exhibition. You'll get these classic blockbuster, amazing photographs by Ansel, like Monolith, the Face of Half Dome. And in this case, you will see Monolith in a couple different examples, when he printed it earlier, when he printed it later, because that type of aesthetic changes. And then you get folks like the amazing Mark Klett, who teaches at Arizona State University, and Byron Wolf, who go back to these places with digital technology, and they pull back and they show you what it's like to have stood where Watkins or Adams stood, and then the types of choices they were making, whether it was because of the limitations or the possibilities of their technology, but also the compositions that they wanted to make and what they chose to be their final print. And they also show you, you can see it, and you'll see a little bit here, there are people in these photographs. And Mark Klett talks about the fact that you will never see an Ansel Adams Yosemite if you're in Yosemite, because it's just not possible, because there are so many people around. So it's always really important to remember that what you're seeing in a photograph is not necessarily Yosemite, it's Adams's vision of Yosemite, right? So we reinforce some of those things throughout the exhibition. Oops, oh, yeah, I did it again. Yeah, okay, hold on, forgive me 1 second. For some reason, this allows me to go, I can't go backwards for whatever reason, but that is a Zoom thing or my computer thing. Let's go back to presenter view. Okay. So you will see some of the classic images like Moonrise Hernandez, and then beautiful, beautiful Clearing Winter Storm. You will also see photographs that, because Boston's collection is so amazing, we often see Adams's work through very particular images. This exhibition expands out further and gives you a better sense of all the types of photographs that Ansel was making over time. So you will see things like, here's one of the Parmelian print images that I was saying earlier was more pictorial, from the 1920s. And then by the 1930s, he's more hard-edged and crisp and so on. And this is not necessarily a composition that Adams would make in the 50s or 60s. It's to me, to my eye, it's very different, like having that amazing, but vision changing tree trunk in the foreground. You're probably not going to see that type of photograph from Adams by the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So we get to see this arc of composition change. And how does he become what we may now call a master? I also love the fact that he did this wonderful, huge project for the Park Service right at the during the early years of the war, like 1941, 1942. And there are a lot of photographs that we've just never seen. We've seen some of the really glorious ones that have been promoted, but there's so many others that we haven't seen in these beautiful moments. And so you will see some of those, like a number of shots from Old Faithful. And here's another example. We have some classic images, like the images of the snow scene on the left-hand side by Adams, and then the image below, which I believe is also Yosemite on the very left at bottom. But I hadn't seen that one before, that I can remember anyway. I've done an Ansel Adams exhibition at Philadelphia Museum of Art, but I was specifically looking at issues of abstraction in his work. And we didn't have this photograph in Philadelphia's collection. So I'm seeing so many things that I haven't seen before. But this is another instance where you see additional folks loving the work that Ansel has done, but then thinking about him as somebody who in some ways kind of represents Yosemite. Well, what does their photography look like when they go to Yosemite? And what I love about Catherine Opie's image is, when I think about our national parks and being in national parks, there's so many amazing things to see. And we take a lot of photographs of them, but I still have memories of being in places like Glacier a couple of years ago. And if I didn't photograph it, it's like hazy to me. And over time, my memory gets blurrier. So I love that kind of representation. She's also really interested in the fact that a lot of us can look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's Bridal Veil Fall. Like, yeah, of course it is. Because we have seen so many photographs of it, or we have been there ourselves. So she doesn't need to make it crisp and clear for you. You don't need that to know what it is. And I find that kind of signal making super interesting. And then both Catherine Opie and Abe Morell have little video segments within the exhibition, and they talk about their processes. And Abe talks about the fact that he left Cuba when he was 13 to come to the United States. And what does it mean to not have been born in the United States and then go to these places that are wholly American, if you will, like the national parks? And what kind of photograph can he make to tell his own story or his, give his own perspective? So there's this wonderful talking back and forth in this, and there's a whole gallery on the national parks work, and it's just beautiful. Really, really wonderful. And some of the later works you'll see too. I love these images by Ansel Adams. We don't necessarily think about these when we think about his work, but he was very interested and oftentimes concerned about land usage and water rights. So we deal with those things. We also deal with the Manzanar relocation camp, because he did make photographs there as well during World War II. And people did not want to talk about that or see those photographs when he made them. And so they were long, long ignored. But we do talk about that in this exhibition. But I absolutely love these images, even though there is some tension there in terms of like traffic and highways and fuel usage and so on. I think visually and compositionally, they're just ecstatic and gorgeous. And I love, love, love these images. And then some of the final images you will see in the exhibition. And these were all in the exhibition that Karen made out in Boston, which does not typically have any wildfire or major forest fire issues. She put these together in 2018. There's this wonderful, painful, but also soothing conversation back and forth between Adams's photographs of various wildfires and tree trunks and then growth. I think we have about 3 or 4 of those photographs by Adams, and they were paired with Laura McPhee's beautiful large-scale color photographs that she made in Idaho back in 2008 after a major wildfire there. And again, this holding of this devastation with the hope of the rebirth. And she also has a video in the exhibition, and she talks about the inspiration. She uses large format cameras like Ansel Adams did in a lot of instances to make these images. So there's a continuity of subject matter, there's a continuity of equipment, but here is an example of a color photograph that expresses things that his does in black and white. And I purposely put those at the end of the exhibition before you walk through the exit into the gift shop. Because we have all been so traumatized and damaged by what we have all gone through recently. And it's just been getting closer and closer. And this past year has been hell. And I know for a lot of you where you live, it was, I believe, much worse than even what we had here. So while I realize, I don't want to upset anyone with these photographs, we're already living through it, and we're probably going to live through more of it. So we can't ignore it. And so why don't we acknowledge it? But what I do love about it is this holding of these two truths, that we have problems and we've been through some horrific things, but there is also hope. And I think that's something that Adams is so good at, and so many contemporary landscape photographers, is questioning, but also loving our landscape, and really trying to hold both of those truths at the same time. So just real quick, I'm just going to show you these. We have many programs that will be coming up. We are starting to roll out some of the programming now because we were supposed to be open, but we couldn't be. If you are already a member of the museum, we just released a podcast. If you're not a member, it will be released to everybody soon. But our members have really helped keep us going in the past year. So we are trying to give folks, because they can't come to see us, like little things to keep them engaged. And so if you're a member, you're getting a preview of that podcast. I talk with Karen, the curator of this exhibition, all about things that we don't have time to talk about within the space of the exhibition. Next week, if you're a member, I'm doing a Zoom talk. You all kind of got a preview of it. It's a preview of the exhibition. You got the preview. So we're doing a members live Zoom preview next week, I think next Thursday. Making a Photographer, the early work of Ansel Adams, my really dear friend and colleague, Rebecca Senf. She is, at this point, the world's probably foremost scholar about Ansel Adams' work. She and I will be having a conversation toward the end of March. That is free and open to everyone. So just watch our website for that. And then we're looking into other aspects of, like, what does it mean, diversity within the landscape. So accessibility issues, racism issues, also stewardship of the land. So we're going to be doing environmental programming. We're going to be working with students as well to hopefully get them engaged. We do that often. We're just not quite sure how we can do it right now because we can't have school groups come to the museum. So we're still figuring all of that out. So bear with us, but just keep coming back to our website if you're interested in the program that we'll be rolling out through the summer for as long as we have this exhibition. We're hoping, I expect it to be open and easier to get into May, June, and July. Those are the main months that the exhibition should be open. We have to send it back to, we have a hard stop from Boston. They don't really care when we open, but we only have something like 497 hours of exhibition time because of light levels and light exposure. They're super particular about that, and I understand why. And so they said, we don't care how you use those 497 hours that the lights are on, but that's all you get. And then you've got to start packing up on, I think it's August 3rd, because they need the works back. So thank you for your patience with us as we navigate all of these new realities together. But we're super excited about this exhibition. And I wish I could show you more photographs, but I would keep you here till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and that's not very nice. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts to share?
Yeah, there are a couple of more questions here, both about the exhibit, actually. One is, do some sources of material for an exhibition allow you more freedom? Or do most want that particular kind of control and presentation?
That is such a fabulous question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because when I do an entire talk on this show, I do say that there are, depending on the institution and the curator, there are instances where they will absolutely not let you add a single other photograph into that show. You can't change the labels. Karen has been great, because she said, this exhibition is for your audience. So let me know if there are things that you want to add in. So I am adding in a number of things. Like I mentioned, the Native American photographers, Zig Jackson, Wendy Red Star, and Will Wilson. She already had Will Wilson in, but I'm adding a couple more. And then I'm adding Wendy and Zig in too. And she was thrilled. I also purchased a couple of photographs. I had a little bit of purchase money to add to the discussion as well. And then we have a beautiful Carlton Watkins 19th century print that I added as well. So in this instance, it's been a great relationship, and I was allowed to tease out some things that I think are important for our particular communities. Yes, but we have worked with institutions where that is not an option. It just depends on the show that you're borrowing. The Hank Willis Thomas show that I did last year, that major exhibition, my co-curator and I made sure that if folks wanted to deal with something a little bit differently or add one of Hank's works that wasn't already part of the show, and do their own kind of programming. I like it when people interpret the exhibition that we lend for their own audience too, because I don't live there. I don't know who's coming to their museum. I don't know what their communities need or want. So it's nice when we have just a little bit of freedom to do that.
And another question was about the presentation. Someone noticed that photographs were framed in white with white mat, and was wondering if that's a standard framing now for museum exhibits, or does it vary by photo, subject, location in the gallery?
Varies by all of those things, yeah. And it also varies by the time when the photograph was made. It can even vary by how much frame stock we have. Because sometimes, like, I tend to share, our curator of Japanese art is a print, works on paper specialist, so she specializes in Japanese prints. We have a works on paper or graphic arts curator as well. So the three of us work in 2 dimensions all the time. And a lot of our more historic work, and for prints and drawings and Japanese prints, a ton of the work is historic. It is matted and framed, and it's typically framed in like a walnut stained frame. Sometimes we run out of frames because we're all using them, and frames are really expensive. You may know that already. So, and they take a lot of room to store when you're a museum. So we only have so many. And those, that can be a problem sometimes. Contemporary art, a lot of the work now does not necessarily have a mat. It may be full bleed, and then there's a spacer within the frame. And then the frame, it can be wood, it can be white, it could be black, metal. It just depends on what the artist envisions. I tend to mat and frame, or only frame, like mount and frame, depending on the artist's wishes. A lot of artists are no longer with us, but because they were part of a generation where the standard was to mat and then often frame within a wood frame, we will do what was, let's say, as accurate as possible for the time the object was made. Yeah. So in this exhibition, you're going to see black frames, white metal frames, walnut frames, that you will see a multitude of frames.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Julia, this has been wonderful. I am so impressed with the extent of the collection and the extent of the exhibits. And I'm an import to Oregon. So I've been here 4 years. I'm from New York City. So for me, I didn't know what Oregon holds. And I haven't been to Portland much, especially obviously in the last year. We haven't been there at all. So I was invited to your talks and wasn't able to attend because they're 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, I believe. And
right.
Early for me until we went on Zoom. All right, 10. Well, maybe
I can't do 9 either.
And so I wound up at this is how I first encountered you, was at your last Zoom, the exhibit that you just had. So
good.
I'm thrilled, and I'm looking forward. My question was, are more of these talks going to be open to the public again?
Yes.
And you said yes, after the membership, then the rest of us, or hopefully we encourage more membership now as well.
And like I said, Becky's talk with me, that is an endowed lecture series, and we're always trying as much as possible to reduce barriers to entry to the museum, whether that's online or in person. How much can we do that's free, and so on. The pandemic has put us in a bit of a pinch there, and so members have been really helpful by sustaining their memberships even though they can't come. So we're just trying to give them a little something special for thinking of us. But the podcast will be available to everyone soon enough. What you see on the on YouTube, a lot of times is something you may not be able to attend in person or online. And then we just upload it once it's all formatted, and then you can watch it at any time you want. So
Yeah, your hours for free times are usually in the evenings. It's a little difficult for us, even though we're only an hour away.
well,
makes it
I-5 is not easy anymore. I mean, come on, I've only been
Right,
here 11
exactly.
years, and I'm like, what happened? It got so crowded in 10
Right,
years.
we need to move the museum here. You need we have the Halley Ford, but we could use a branch here as well.
Sure.
Um, Brett has just asked if you would share your email.
Sure. Can I just pop it in the chat? That's probably
Yeah,
the
that would be
easiest.
fine.
Email is typically the easiest way to reach me. I will also be honest that if you don't hear back from me for a while, it is not personal. Just a little busy, and so sometimes it can take me a couple weeks sometimes to answer, and I just want to let you know that it's not personal. It's just how I need to structure my time sometimes. So
Well, I'm
Yeah,
thrilled
I
that you
found
joined
this-
us. Anyone else have something to say, Max?
I found this really interesting in seeing what you see in pictures and how you lay out exhibits. It helps me think about the kind of images that I make, and it shows different possibilities that I otherwise might not have thought about. I could listen to you till 10 o'clock. I mean, I really appreciate what you've done.
yes,
that's
thank
so
you,
nice.
thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
come on back. Come on, like I said, go to the website, come visit us on our next Zooms. There's a lot more coming, and we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. And we can, if you, I can follow on the website, but we can also announce your programs on our sites.
Oh,
And-
that would be amazing.
Sure, we'll
That
do
would be
that,
great.
and we'll
Love
invite you
that.
back sometime in the future.
Yeah,
We'd
that
love
would
to
be
have
fun.
you back again, and
Because I have no idea what I'm doing after this. So sometime soon I'll know. But I've been so busy. I don't know what my next show will be, and I'm kind of excited and scared to figure it out.
Well, we're looking forward to finding out, and just thank you again so much. Anyone else have anything else they want to ask Julia at the moment before we wish her? Sorry, we can't offer you some dinner now or an after meeting drink, but we'll do a post-COVID brain check.
The thought is there, and that's all I need. I appreciate that very much. It's so good, so nice to spend.
Well, we don't have to tell you, safe drive home, and
exactly.
Everyone.
I don't have to worry about I-5.
Isn't it? I know. I really like these. I've actually said that I'm going to quit this position of getting speakers after this. Zoom makes it so much easier. So thank you so much, Julia. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Julia.
Drinking, don't drive.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Julia. It's wonderful. Good to see everybody.
Yep.
And
Maybe we could, if it's like in the summer, maybe we could make a couple of different groups and go up there and see that exhibit. I would just love to see it.
Any exhibit. Yeah, I just was amazed at the extent of their collection. I had no idea this resource in photography, let alone whatever the rest of the museum is.
I was up there summer of, I think August of 2019. We had a out-of-country guest here, so we took her to the Portland Art Museum. They were having their Paris exhibit at the time. I was blown away. You could just stay there for a long, long time to get through it, and it's amazing. It's just very
Really cannot appreciate it all in just one day.
no.
I've gone there at the open and stayed until the close and felt rushed. I mean, it is tremendous.
It's floor after floor after floor.
Yeah, I haven't been there.
Wonderful.
Part of the reason we haven't been there is one, I don't know Portland that well, but parking seems difficult, and
Yes.
it's a $20 a person entry fee. So for me, that's probably why I didn't go before COVID. Now I would go, but some of that makes it challenging.
Yeah, well, that's why I suggested a couple of groups, after everybody is COVID-free and has vaccinations and everything. It would be nice if we had like a couple of groups to go up there and spend a day and have lunch or something.
I'm not sure exactly where this is located, but
It's downtown. It's downtown.
Well, is it within walking distance of the train station?
No.
No, it's not. But
No, but they
within
have
walking-
buses and
It's within walking distance of the light rail. So
Yeah.
you can take the train up and then the light rail to it. It's on the park blocks is where it is. It's
Okay, well, we've done 2 or 3 train trips up there that everybody just absolutely loved. So this
Yeah, the train trips are fun.
might be a good time to revive that.
well, another thing that you can do is drive and meet at a park and ride and then ride the light rail into this, which really works well.
Yeah.
All good ideas for sometime in the future when we're more, COVID free again. But maybe hopefully before August 3rd, when this exhibit closes,
Right.
or they get their 497 hours. However, it's an odd number, isn't it? 497. They're obviously measuring lumens of everything.
I didn't get a chance to tell her. She said she didn't know what she was doing, and I wanted to tell her she came to the right place.
Because none of us do either. Is that what
We don't either.
feel right at home?
Yeah.
Well, I will invite her to our next, I will put her on our list and invite her to some, if she's welcome to come back. So maybe we'll see her again, just dropping in.
Well, thank you for bringing her to us. I loved listening to her.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that.
Since I took up photography, it's really opened my eyes. I never knew anything about art, but when I went to the art museum up there, I was just like on a high the whole time I was there. I'd never seen such beauty in all my life. Art is just amazing. And I also got to visit the Rijksmuseum in Holland. And you will skin your chin because it's on the floor. You just cannot. It's amazing. The Rembrandt that takes up this humongous wall, and you just stand in there and you look at it and go, how did he ever get this started? Where did he start? Where did he finish? And all these details, and everybody's looking at you, and the dog, everything's perfect. It was just like amazing. I stood there for at least a half an hour looking at it. It was amazing. So it's opened my eyes to art. And so I think going to the art museum up there would be wonderful for everybody. And I thank you for bringing her to us.
I think it's a great vision of art. Yeah, I think it's so much, it can be so much a part of our lives. You're right. And what a great experience.
Oh, and the stories behind the artwork and who did it and when they did it and why they did it and the different styles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all amazing to me. Yeah.
I agree. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed her. It's like I find these people and I have no idea what they're going to be like. So, as I said, I found her through this program that she was doing on one of the exhibits they did. It was the one whose name, I'm sorry, I couldn't even say it. The one who was had been the photographer in Oregon and then wound up in the Navy doing those shots. The exhibit they currently have now.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, Beyond the Waves, I think it was the exhibit was called. So it was an interesting talk because of course they do talk about who they are and how they're doing it and what they're, you get that full 3-dimensional view of the artists rather than just the art.
Right.
Yeah. I was up there years ago when they did a minor white exhibit, and was actually brought up there by the photography teacher at Schmecken. He took us all up to go see this, and I mean it was amazing. So I recommend going.
Yeah, I think it sounds.
I mean, it is a wonderful place.
And I think we should, consider if any of us are into it being, supporting members. I mean, there's so many things to support these days. It's just another one. I mean, there's everything to support because everything's closed regarding arts and theater and music, but it's another one to think about. And I think if you are a member, then entrance, I think it includes free entry to the museum. Anyone else before we call it a night? All right, then Matt, you recorded it. You're taking care of the recording, or
team effort between Rick and I.
What was that?
Team effort between Rick and I.
Okay, excellent. So I don't have to worry about that. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope this is good. Next month is Adam Gibbs. So that should be really a very different kind of talk. And I'll see y'all then.
All right, take care. Good to see
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Stay healthy, everyone.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Take care.